William Cooper's Behold a Pale Horse, chapter number 2, and page 79. Quote, I firmly believe that all adult secret societies that practice degrees of initiation and consider the members to be illuminated are branches of the original ages-old Illuminati. Their goal is to rule the world. The doctrine of this group is not democracy or communism, but a form of fascism. The doctrine is totalitarian socialism. You must begin to think correctly. The Illuminati are not communists, but some communists are Illuminati. Monarchism thesis faced democracy antithesis in World War I, which resulted in the formation of communism and the League of Nations synthesis. Democracy and communism thesis faced fascism antithesis in World War II and resulted in a more powerful United Nations synthesis. Capitalism now faces communism, and the result will be the New World Order, totalitarian socialism. In 1953, report of the California Senate Investigating Committee on Education stated, so-called modern communism is apparently the same hypocritical world conspiracy to destroy civilization that was founded by the Illuminati, and that raised its head in our colonies here at the critical period before the adoption of our Constitution. The California Senate understood that communism is the work of Illuminati. They failed to realize that the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission are also the work of the Illuminati. You must begin to think correctly. The enemy is not communism. It is Illuminism. The communists are not going to be much happier with the New World Order than we. I hope to show that the most modern secret societies, especially those that practice degrees of initiation, and that is key, are really one society with one purpose. You may call them whatever you wish. The Order of the Quest, the Jason Society, the Roshaniya, the Kabbalah, the Knights Templar, the Knights of Malta, the Knights of Columbus, the Jesuits, the Masons, the Ancient and Mystical Order of the Rosicrucians, the Illuminati, the Nazi Party, the Communist Party, the executive members of the Council on Foreign Relations, the group, the Brotherhood of the Dragon, and the Rosicrucians, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group, the Open Friendly Secret Society, the Vatican, the Russell Trust, the Skull and Bones, the Scroll and Key, the Order. They are all the same and all work toward the same ultimate goal. This is William Cooper's Behold a Pale Horse. Page, now going to read page 234, chapter 12, page 234. Through ignorance or misplaced trust, we as the people have abdicated our role as the watchdog of our government. Our government was founded of the people, for the people, by the people. There was no mention or intent ever to abdicate our role and place our total trust in a handful of men who meet secretly to decide our fate. In fact, the structure of our government was designed to prevent that from ever happening. If we had done our jobs as citizens, we would have never reached this point. Most of us are completely ignorant as to even the most basic functions of our government. We have truly become a nation of sheep, and sheep are always eventually led to the slaughter. It is time to stand up in the manner of our forefathers and walk like men. I remind you that the Jews of Europe marched obediently to the ovens after having been warned, believing all the while that the facts could not possibly be true. When the outside world was told of the Holocaust occurring in Hitler's Europe, it was not believed first. Don't worry. The New World Order calls for the destruction of the sovereignty of nations, including the United States. The New World Order cannot and will not allow our Constitution to continue to exist. The New World Order will be a totalitarian socialist system. We will be slaves shackled to a cashless system of economic control.
A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Friday, December 12th, 2025. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, wherever you may be listening to this broadcast, this message, declaration, proclamation, audio, video, recording. And by now, you know, it is whatever you want to call it. Call it what you want to call it. Say what you want to say about it. Love it, hate it, despise it, embrace it. Refrain from embracing from it. Strike it down, delete it. Do whatever you want with it. And by now you know, do it while free speech is available. While you can still speak your mind, while you can still say whatever you want to say, while you can still have an opinion, while you can still rebuke and reprove a king, for free, without consequence. Only consequence might be you might lose some people. Gee golly gosh. Make sure you do it. Wow, free speech is available. And that, my friends,
my name is Bonatine H. Greenhouse.
Has been the motto for quite some time. That's what the motto has evolved into for a long time now. You're tuning in to another episode of HOTT, and by now you know my name is Alan Grant Siders. A lot has been happening out there on the world stage. A lot has been taking place in the last month since the last broadcast. We came with quotes from Freemasons and Freemasonry blown wide open. Amongst other things, but a lot has been taking place since the last broadcast. A lot of things have been going on, like I said, out there on the world stage. And lo and behold, promises made, promises not kept. The train continues to roll off the tracks. The lies continue to pile and mount up. The hand continues to be revealed more and more as the days go by, as the months go by, as the year rolls to a close. As the hero Donald Trump begins to reveal more and more of himself that he is nothing but a great liar and a great magician. A great liar and a great magician. We talked about that. We've been talking about that from the very beginning. we've been talking about how you got Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde out of Donald Trump. You've got one term where he wooed and awed all the conservative Republicans, the Christian conservative Republicans. He oohed and awed you and wooed you on his first capitalistic venture in term, because he gave you a nice dividend paycheck. He gave you a nice dividend tax return. However, he oohed and awed you. He oohed and awed you, and now it appears that we have the consummation of the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in office, where he is just a babbling, nonsensical ignoramus and dupes the American people in the process with his long-winded speeches that just go all over the place, while he sits up there now on his little tour that he's begun, where he's going around and he's trying to tell you that the whole pricing thing is a hoax and inflation is a hoax and all these things that comes out of his mouth. And the people will still continue to clap and cheer and praise this great liar and great magician on screen. Just like the American people throughout the years have cheered and praised and clapped their hands for great liars and great magicians on screen. Members of the secret society who have sworn an oath in secret to carry out the great work which is being done right before your very eyes today, as they systematically dismantle and destroy your nation right before your very eyes. As the American people are sitting at the edge of their chairs waiting for the Epstein files to be released, I got news for you people out there. They'll be redacted like they've been saying. A lot of them will be blacked out. They're not going to give you what you want, ladies and gentlemen. And if they do give you what you want, if they do give you the files and it's got all the names on there, and what's that going to do? I mean, that's going to play right into their hand as well. With the people in an uprising, and they can just shut down the nation. They can just call a state of emergency. They can call for martial law and just shut down the nation. I mean, it's a lose-lose either way at this point. The nation was hijacked a long time ago. The time to stand up was a long time ago. People can always, yes, they can always stand up. There is more of us than there is them, but a lot of people are not willing to give up their comforts and luxury like the men of old, the men of the past who founded the nation. They're not willing to shed blood for that, but they'll go shed blood around the world for a paycheck and to create a false sense of security, a false sense of we're doing this for freedom, so that freedom can continue. For the corrupt banker wars, the banker wars that have been fought, the blood that have been shed for the bankers, the blood that has been shed for the Rothschild family, and the political stronghold that they have, the financial stronghold that they have on the world. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, quote, "Every gun made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies theft from those who will have not been fed and are cold and not clothed." General Smedley Butler, Lieutenant General Smedley Butler, said, quote, "I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service, and during this period I spent most of my time as a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street and the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. I helped make Mexico, and especially Tampico, safe for American oil interests. In 1914, I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the National City Bank boys to collect revenues in. I helped in the raping of a half a dozen Central American republics for the benefit of Wall Street. I helped purify Nicaragua for the International Banking House of Brown Brothers in 1902 to 1912. I brought light to the Dominican Republic for the American sugar interests in 1916. I helped make Honduras right for the American fruit companies in 1903. In China, in 1927, I helped see to it that Standard Oil went on its way unmolested. Looking back on it, I might have given Al Capone a few hints. The best he could do was to operate his racket in 3 districts. I operated on 3 continents." End quote. Quote, "War is a racket. It always has been. It is possibly the oldest, easily the most profitable, surely the most vicious. It is the only one international scope. It is the only one in which the profits are reckoned in dollars and in the losses of lives." To summarize, quote, again, Lieutenant General Smedley Butler, for all you deniers and all you fake patriots out there, and all you people who think that these wars are just and righteous, and you're fighting for freedom, and you're fighting in the name of freedom. Smedley Butler told you a long time ago, I wish they would teach about Smedley Butler in high school. I wish they would teach about Smedley Butler in the school system. Because right here is a man who realized what he was doing was wicked, was ungodly, was filthy and corrupt. And like a good American watchman, like a true American patriot, he renounced it and he spoke out against it. Just like anybody else who would come to their senses. I came to my senses. I realized that I fought in bogus war and the Operation Enduring Freedom. It's a lie. This man was warning long ago. This man was telling the truth long ago. This man doesn't get talked about. Most of the people that'll hear this have never even heard of this man. Yet you'll still ignorantly support war. Yet you'll still talk about how great, what a proud patriot you are. What a proud American patriot you are. Walking around high-minded, haughty, puffed up, pompous, arrogant. And the interesting thing is a lot of these guys who do that haven't even put their foot on a battlefield. Haven't even put their foot on a battlefield. This man said he operated on 3 continents. United States Marine. All for the bankers. All for the crony capitalists. And the cycle continues today, ladies and gentlemen. The cycle continues today. It has not ceased. As you heard Dwight D. Eisenhower off rip before we cued the music for the intro. It has not ceased, but it will persist. The military-industrial complex. Why? Because there's big money to be made through it. There's much profit to be gained from it. And it's all pertinent to what's going on right now with the Venezuelan oil tanker that was seized by the United States. The narrative is that it was sanctioned 3 years ago. And that's why they're seizing it. But what they're not going to talk about is that that tanker is tied to Iran. Somebody we've been itching to go to war with because they don't have they completely denounce the petrodollar system, just like Venezuela, who are both not tied to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. They're both not tied to it. At one time they were, but now they're not. And anytime you have these regimes who aren't going to go along with protocol, just like Iraq, just like Afghanistan, and there's wealthy profits, there's oil involved, liquid gold, we'll call it, involved. The United States always finds itself in the middle of it, always finds itself muscling and bullying people around the world. Isn't that interesting, ladies and gentlemen? By now you know, just as Smedley Butler revealed here, The war is a racket. That we have sacrificed men and women for years and decades and decades and decades now. All for the name of freedom. While the crony capitalists at the top, the political figures at the top, the people at the top move people around like pawns on a chessboard, sacrificing them, shedding blood, spilling blood, innocent blood. Innocent blood. That's why this matters. That's why it should matter to you. That innocent blood is being shed. And we're going to see what's going to play out with this, ladies and gentlemen. But I can tell you right now, that if this has no type of implication to come from it, such as, i.e., some small-scale invasion, some type of war, some type of trigger, false flag, whatever you want to call it, I'll be surprised, and so should you. Because this is how they've been playing this game for a long time, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, Iran's name is involved. It may not be involved in the mainstream. They talk about how it has ties to Hezbollah. They're not telling you about Iran, though. I haven't seen it yet. And it's barely mentioned. You've got the USS Gerald Ford out there, the largest warship in the entire world. Just like before, they deployed it when the whole Israel-Hamas thing kicked off. They deployed it then. There was talks of war with Iran. We have bombed Iran, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget it. Don't forget it. We're so forgetful in this nation. So forgetful. But we're acting more like pirates and thugs than we are anything. And Donald Trump is going against his word per usual. He's done nothing but lied to you people, talking about he's going to stop all these wars. And by the way, I've seen articles about Donald Trump going around touting he's stopped 8 wars. He's a bold-faced liar. He's a bold-faced liar. Has not stopped 8 wars. But that's what he does. He lies, and you eat it up. You'll praise the Lord. You'll praise the Lord over it. You'll praise the Lord about it. About being lied to. And you'll still support it. You'll still support it. You'll still support another bogus war. You'll still call it righteous. A lot of you people out there listening. Some who are in the know, I'm not talking about you. You obviously you know that by now. I'm very aware there are people that listen to this that are very in tune and know what I'm talking about. The reason for these messages are to provoke you to go search the matter out yourself. I try to give you the basic surface level so you'll go search it out yourself. Prove it wrong. But there's without a shadow of a doubt these things take place in this nation. These people care more about their own interests and their own profits and their own investments than they do you. They don't care about you. How much more will you have to see to realize that? Secret society members are within the confines of Washington, D.C. It's been known for a long time. It's been common knowledge for years and years and years. Yet the people still believe in a two-party system. They still buy into the fact that there are two parties pitted against each other. If that isn't the greatest divide and conquer scheme that I've ever seen, it is. The Hegelian dialect right in motion before your very eyes. Smedley Butler. He summarized 3 steps must be taken to smash the war racket. We must take the profit of our war. We must permit the youth of the land who would bear arms to decide whether or not there should be war. We must limit our military forces to home defense purposes. All things we are not doing. All things that this man got up there, ran his mouth about, campaigned about, and promised you America first, lies, lies, and more lies, and you bid on it, you bought it, hook, line, and sinker. And now here we go. They use the whole war on drugs as their storyline as to why they're doing what they're doing. But we went over on one of the latest episodes that they did the same thing in Panama through George Bush. The director of the CIA, George Bush, ran the same game in Panama. And so these people do the same things over and over and over again. The same playbook over and over again. And for the most recent of times, we had George Bush and Dick Cheney. We had the 9/11 inside job attack on the American people, in which George Bush and Dick Cheney profited greatly off of it, duped the American people into a 20-year war in which there was no weapons of mass destruction discovered. There was no closure for the American people. They dragged out a 20-year war, and most people forgot of even how we got there in the first place. We had men and women go sacrifice themselves on the altar of so-called freedom and protection of the country, when it had none of that. It was fulfilling the interests of George Bush and Dick Cheney, lining their pockets. And it's all very relevant because Dick Cheney just recently passed away. Dick Cheney was a wicked man. As George Bush And George Sr. and Prescott Bush were all wicked men, bonesmen. George Bush Jr. will be a bonesman unto the grave. George Bush Sr. was a bonesman unto the grave. Prescott Bush was a bonesman unto the grave. And there's no way that George Bush does not choose Dick Cheney to be his VP, to be his vice president, unless he has some tie to the secret societies. Has to be, as George Bush said in his eulogy, as he gave for Dick Cheney, he needed somebody he could trust. Well, you can trust somebody who's sworn an allegiance to Satan and Lucifer. You can trust them very well, and those two made great profits off our expense, ladies and gentlemen. How much did Dick Cheney profit from his billion-dollar industry, Halliburton? Well, just listen to this short reel here.
My name is Bonatine H. Greenhouse. I have agreed to voluntarily appear at this hearing.
Bunny Greenhouse was an unlikely whistleblower. In 2005, she was the highest-ranked civilian at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
When I took my oath of office, it said that you will conduct the business of contracting impartially and with preferential treatment toward none. I saw preferential treatment toward KBR.
KBR was Kellogg Brown and Root, back then a wholly owned subsidiary of the oil services firm Halliburton. In the weeks prior to the invasion, Bunny learned that KBR was being considered for a massive no-bid contract known as Restore Iraqi Oil, or RIO. What was the size of this contract?
$7 billion.
$7 billion.
$billion.
What Bunny didn't know is that even more powerful forces may have been involved.
A lot of attention fell on Dick Cheney, the vice president, and the fact was that he had been the head of Halliburton for 6 years. So the suspicion began to grow that perhaps Cheney was steering government contracts to KBR.
A spokesperson for Dick Cheney told us that the former vice president severed all ties with Halliburton and KBR in the summer of 2000 when he became candidate for vice president. For Bunny Greenhouse, biting her tongue was never an option.
I can unequivocally state that the abuse related to contracts awarded to KBR represents the most blatant and improper contract abuse I have witnessed during the course of my professional career.
A 2004 government report decided the RIO contract was properly awarded, but the Army eventually split up the contract and, as Bunny had requested from the beginning, opened it up to competition. Eventually, your enemies at the Army Corps of Engineers caught up with you.
I felt that I was physically being threatened. They set up a booby trap that caused me to fall.
This is from NPR, February 11th, 2004. Vice President Dick Cheney has been under scrutiny for his ties to Halliburton, where he was once CEO. Halliburton won $7 billion in no-bid contracts in Iraq. Cheney has said he has not influenced those deals in the weeks. The New Yorker magazine writer Jane Meyer examines the confluence of Cheney's corporate and public careers. Here, Mayer and NPR's Bob Edwards. And we know that Cheney and Bush are co-conspirators in the 9/11 terror attacks on this nation, without the shadow of a doubt. So, the point of all me talking about Dick Cheney, not only because he recently passed away, but the companies and the contractors that profit big money off of the military-industrial complex and these wars. That's the reason. Companies like Halliburton, companies like Northrop Grumman are just some examples of the military-industrial complex and the big business and the big money that goes into all this. All at the expense of the American people and the lies and the corruption and the deaths of the innocent. Yes, it should make you think differently about the people that you blindly and ignorantly support. That you blindly and ignorantly support. The Creature at Jekyll Island, page 229, titled The Formula. Let us imagine a man who is totally pragmatic. He is smarter and more cunning than most men, and in fact holds them in thinly disguised contempt. He may respect the talents of a few, but has little concern over the condition of mankind. He has observed that kings and politicians are always fighting over something or other, and has concluded that wars are inevitable. He also has learned that wars can be profitable, not only by lending or creating the money to finance them, but from the government favoritism in the granting of commercial subsidies or monopolies. He is not capable of such primitive feeling as patriotism, so he is free to participate in the funding of any side in any conflict, limited only by factors of self-interest. If such a man were to survey the world around him, it is not difficult to imagine that he would come to the following conclusions, which would become the prime directives of his career. Number 1, war is the ultimate discipline to any government. If it can successfully meet the challenge of war, it will survive. If it cannot, it will perish. All else is secondary. The sanctity of its laws, the prosperity of its citizens, and the solvency of its treasury will be quickly sacrificed by any government in its primal act of self-survival. Number 2, all that is necessary, therefore, to ensure that a government will maintain or expand its debt to involve in the war or the threat of war, the greater the threat and the more destructive the war, the greater the need for debt. Number 3, to involve a country in war or the threat of war, it will be necessary for it to have enemies with credible military might. If such enemies already exist, all the better. If they exist but lack military strength, it will be necessary to provide them the money to build their war machine. If an enemy does not exist at all, then it will be necessary to create one by financing the rise of a hostile regime. Did you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? Did you hear that? Sounds like when the United States funded the Mujahideen when Afghanistan was at war with Russia. Sounds like when the United States funded Al-Qaeda. They funded Al-Qaeda, ladies and gentlemen. They funded Osama bin Laden. They trained Osama bin Laden. And then they implemented Osama bin Laden as the orchestrator of 9/11. Would you imagine that? They finance hostile regimes. They cause the problem. They create the solution. And what's the solution? War. Why? Because it's profitable. It's very, very profitable. It's very, very lucrative. Number 4, the ultimate obstacle is a government which declines to finance its wars through debt. Although this seldom happens, when it does, it will be necessary to encourage internal political opposition, insurrection, or revolution to replace that government with one that is more compliant to our will. The assassination of heads of state could play an important role in this process. So think about Maduro. Think about the leaders in Iran who don't want to play ball with the American petrodollar, who don't want to play ball with the United States. What happens to them? When they don't want to play ball, what does it say? The ultimate obstacle is a government which declines to finance its wars through debt, through the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, who's a lender. But if they don't want to play ball and they don't want to go through the IMF and they want to decline the IMF and they want to be their own separate entity and be a sovereign in their own, oh, watch out. It will be necessary to encourage internal political opposition, insurrection, revolution to replace that government with one that is more compliant to our will. Take out the non-compliant government and set up our own puppet regime who will comply to the will, as it says here. Is that not what went on in Iraq and Afghanistan? Is that not what goes on throughout the years? Vietnam? When will you people wake up? It's all here. I highly encourage you to buy this book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. It's written by G. Edward Griffin. And it talks about the Federal Reserve banking system, how it destroyed our nation. But it's more than that. A lot of important information in this book. Highly, highly important information in this book. It'll speed you up on a lot of why these things take place in the world. If any enemy does not exist at all, I'm sorry. It says, it will replace that government with one that is more compliant to our will. The assassination of heads of state could play an important role in this process. Number 5. No nation can be allowed to remain military stronger than its adversaries, for that could lead to peace and reduction of debt. You see that? These wars will never end. Because the whole idea is to keep people in debt. To accomplish this balance of power, it may be necessary to finance both sides of the conflict. Unless one of the combatants is hostile to our interests, and therefore must be destroyed, neither side should be allowed a decisive victory or defeat, while we must always proclaim the virtues of peace. The unspoken objective is perpetual war. While we must always proclaim the virtues of peace, the unspoken objective is perpetual war. That's why the bombs don't stop dropping. That's why the people don't stop dying. That's why these wars continue. That's why. And yet you call it righteous. And yet you call it. A lot of people say the hand of God is with America. The hand of God is with Israel. Zionist Israel. We'll read about Zionism coming to power here and who funded that. Right here. Who funded that? Well, let's read. Let's read about Rothschild first. Rothschild, the Rothschild formula. The Creature at Jekyll Island, page 231. Whether anyone actually put this strategy into words or passed it along from generation to generation is not important. In fact, it is doubtful it has ever worked that way, whether it is the product of conscious planning or merely the consequence of men responding to the profit of opportunities inherent in fiat money. The world's financial lords have acted as though they were following such a plan, and this has become especially apparent since the creation of the central bank mandrake mechanism 3 centuries ago. The balance of power question is particularly intriguing. Most history texts present the concept as though it were some kind of natural social phenomenon which somehow has worked to the benefit of mankind. The implication is that it's just wonderful how after all those European wars, no nation was strong enough to completely dominate the others. When the United States emerged from World War II with exactly such power, it was widely deplored the massive political financial mechanisms such as foreign aid and disarmament were set in motion to restore the balance. This has become almost revered doctrine of international democracy. But the overlooked consequence of the sentimental notion of its wars between equals have become the permanent landscape of history. This does not mean that every warlike group that comes along will find easy financing from the lords and masters. It depends on whom they threaten, how likely they are to succeed. In 1830, for example, the Dutch were facing an uprising of their subjects in Belgium. But the ruling governments and the revolutionaries were dependent upon the Rothschilds for financing their conflict. The Dutch rulers were reliable customers for loans, and just important, they were reliable in their payment of interest of those loans. It would have been foolhardy to provide more than the token assistance to the rebels who, if they came to power, quite likely would have refused to honor the debts of the former puppet regime Solomon Rothschild explained. After the revolution was resolved by negotiation rather than by arms, the new government in Brussels was a natural target for financial takeover. James Rothschild laid out the strategy that has become the model of such operations since. Now is the moment at which we should take advantage to make ourselves absolute masters of the country's finances. The first step will be to establish ourselves in an intimate footing with Belgium's new finance minister to gain his confidence and to take all the treasury bonds he may offer. Reading down into page 232, the mark of the Rothschild formula is unmistakable in these conflicts. The monetary scientists often were seen financing both sides. Whether ending in victory or defeat, the outcome merely preserved or restored the European balance of power. And the most permanent result of any of these wars was expanded debt for all parties. Summary. By the end of the 18th century, the House of Rothschild had become one of the most successful financial institutions the world has ever known. Its meteoric rise can be attributed to the great industry and shrewdness of the five brothers who established themselves in various capitals of Europe and forged the world's first international financial network. As pioneers in the practice of lending money to governments, they soon learned that this provided unique opportunities to parlay wealth into political power as well. Before long, most of the princes and kings of Europe had come within their influence. The Rothschilds also have mastered the art of smuggling on a grand scale, often with the tacit approval of the governments whose laws they violated. This was perceived by all parties as an unofficial bonus for providing needed funding to those same governments, particularly in a time of war. The fact that different branches of Rothschild network also might be providing funds for the enemy was pragmatically ignored. Thus, a time-honored practice among financiers was born, profiting from both sides. The Rothschilds operated a highly efficient intelligence gathering system, which provided them with advanced knowledge of important events, knowledge which was invaluable for investment decisions. When an exhausted Rothschild courier delivered the first news of the Battle of Waterloo, Nathan was able to deceive the London bond traders into selling panic, and that allowed him to acquire the dominant holding of England's entire debt at but a tiny fraction of its worth. A study of these similar events reveals personality profile, not just of the Rothschilds, but the special breed of international financiers whose success typically is built upon certain character traits. Those include cold objectivity, immunity to patriotism, and indifference to the human condition. In other words, wicked men who lie in wait to deceive. Woe unto them who seek deep to hide their counsel from the Lord, that saith, Who knoweth us? Who seeth us? The profile, the basis for proposing a theoretical strategy called the Rothschild formula, which motivates such men to propel governments into war for the profits they yield. This formula most likely has never been consciously phrased as it appears here, but subconscious motivations and personality traits work together to implement it nevertheless. As long as the mechanism of central banking exists, it will be to such men an irresistible temptation to convert debt into perpetual war and war into perpetual debt. In the following chapters, we shall track the distinctive footprint of the Rothschild formula as it leads up to our own doorstep in the present day. And why does that matter? Because it all plays a part in this family that has funded these wars, playing both sides. Playing both sides, ladies and gentlemen. And these wars will continue because that's the name of the game. Perpetual war, ladies and gentlemen. It's as simple as that. And with that being said, I do wish you well. Till next time.